Webcast. This evening we're going to combine our discussion with the Farbrengen. A special Hasidic gathering for tonight marks the date in 1826 when the second Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Dovbev Lubavitch, was freed from prison, from incarceration, after finding out that there was false charges. And this evening and tomorrow, the 10th day of Kislev, is marked with Farbrengens. A Farbrengen brings blessing. When people come together, even under the format as this webcast, it's an opportunity for all of us to wish each other l'chaim, blessings, for all of us to be blessed, both physically and spiritually, and all the matters in our life, in every single sense. So first, let me begin l'chaim, to wish everyone only blessings in every aspect of our lives, much nachas, Yiddish nachas from our children and grandchildren. And this special day with all of its blessings will surely be a source of amazing brachas for all that we need. Now, one of the favorite topics of Jewish people is, of course, food. Of all the things that we observe in order to remember events of our historical past, one of them, the most strangest, is what we read in this week's portion of that relates to Jacob. Torah tells us, Vayishlach Yaakov, Jacob sent out messengers, and we find later on that he's wrestling with an angel. This is actually Esau's spiritual guardian. And in the course of his struggle, his hip is dislocated. And the Torah tells us, because of this, to this very day, the children of Israel are not to eat the sciatica nerve of an animal, which is by the hip joint. Why? Because he struck Jacob's hip socket at the sciatica nerve. And the question we must ask ourselves, just because 4,000 years ago one of my ancestors had a hip dislocated, I need to forgo a good rump steak? The sciatica nerve, which in Hebrew is called the Gid HaNosha, and its associated sinews and nerves are located in the animal's hindquarters. And because they're very difficult to properly remove, only cuts from the forequarters are usually available as kosher meat. So if it has always bothered you that you can't get a kosher rump steak, you can blame it on Father Jacob and his wrestling match with the angel of death, with the angel of Esau. So tell me, just because 4,000 years ago one of my ancestors had a hip dislocated, I must curb my culinary cravings? Is it fair? Is it logical? Why remember that? What's the point? And I share with you this evening the 12th century French sage Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir, the Rashbam. He was a grandson of Rashi and a biblical and Talmudical commentator of note. And I share with you his amazing insight on why to this very day we are not allowed to eat that area of the animal, the sciatica nerve. The story of Jacob and the angel occurred just prior to Jacob's impending encounter when he's going to meet up with his estranged twin brother. As you remember, Esau was coming with 400 armed men, and Jacob was actually planning to flee from Esau. That's when the angel attacked him. So according to the Rashbam, the reason for the angel wrestling with Jacob was that he would be forced to stand his ground, remain there, and not escape via some back route. So destiny itself really was compelling Jacob to confront the enemy and overcome him. Only then would he witness the fulfillment of God's promise to protect him from harm. It seems that Jacob was coming dangerously close to developing kind of a pattern of escapism. Think about this. It seems that Jacob was coming dangerously close to run away. Think about this. He fled Beersheba when Esau threatened to kill him. So he ran away from his brother then. He had fled away from Lavan, his father-in-law in Haran, in the middle of the night, when he worried that Lavan wouldn't allow him to return to his homeland. And now he was preparing again to flee from his brother Esau. At any moment now, there would be another, nocturnal escape. Jacob seems to be running constantly. Apparently, God wanted Jacob to learn that this philosophy of escapism is not the Jewish way. So what happened? The angel dislocated his hip, preventing him from running away. Now, Jacob had no choice but to fight. In the end, he defeated the angel and was blessed with the name Israel. He was given a new name, Israel, signifying a superior stature, victory, nobility. The Hebrew word Yisrael makes the word Yashar Kale, a sign, an uplifting name. No longer shall it be said that your name is Jacob, but Israel. For you have fought with the divine and with man, and you have overcome. Those are the words from the Torah. So the lesson to all of us, every one of us, we are the sons and daughters of Jacob. There's something to us to learn. Every one of us must become a child of Israel. What is that? The quality of fearlessness and courage, of strength and sacrifice. For these are the hallmarks of each one of us, the hallmarks of Israel. When we stop running away from our problems and face up to them with guts, with fortitude, we enter that higher state of consciousness. We move from the Jacob Jew, who is still struggling, to Israel mode, where we finally emerge triumphant. When we are prepared to take up the challenge and go for the fight rather than the flight, we move from being wrestlers to becoming winners, from humble Jacob to the dominant Israel. I must tell you, escapism is not the Jewish way, of course, and it's never easy. Escape is usually the path of least resistance. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that we should go looking for a fight, but the fact is that there will be times when we know that we really need to have, we're going to have that confrontation. We need to square up to a particular problem or individual in order to deal with our situation effectively. Of course, we shouldn't be confrontational people, but often we know in our heart of hearts that if we don't engage a problem honestly, it's just going to continue to plague us. If we can move from meekness to courage, then the story of Jacob's wrestling match will live on and continue to inspire us to become the stronger personalities we really can be. Therefore, this dislocated hip joint becomes worthy of eternal remembrance, what happened to Jacob, because it makes us a better person. And the small sacrifices we make in avoiding those unkosher cuts of meat around the animal's socket are really worth the effort. Something to think about on this very special evening. Now, many people have asked me, please address, he's talking about food. What is this pigs in Judaism? There's probably no animal as disgusting to Jewish sensitivities as the pig. It's not just because it may not be eaten. There are plenty of other animals that aren't kosher either. But none of them arouse as much disgust as a pig. Colloquially, the pig is the ultimate symbol of loathing. When you say that someone acted like a chazer, like a pig, what do we mean? It suggests that he or she did something unusually abominable. Ameshagas. Indeed, many people think of the pork, the ham, the bacon as the most unkosher foods there are out there. So allow me to explore some reasons for this. And we will also discover that as bad as the pig's past is, It really has a bright future ahead of it. Hang in with me and you'll find out. So, why not eat pork? Because, the Torah gives us two physical signs that mark a kosher land animal. They must ruminate, chew their cud, and have fully split hooves. It is then, for this reason, the pig is the ultimate symbol of a loathed animal. Because it only has one of these signs. One of those animals is this pig. It has hooves which are split, but it does not have or chew its cud. It is therefore an unclean for you. That's what the Torah tells us. Many of the commentaries offer reasons for the mitzvah of keeping kosher. However, the Talmud asserts that the kosher laws fall under the category of chak. It's a mitzvah without rationale. So this mitzvah of keeping kosher is a supra-rational one, not something that we can understand logically. In the same vein, the famous Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says that one shouldn't say, I abstained from pork because I don't like it. But rather, a person should say that we do so. We don't eat pork because God has commanded us. What are these attitudes that we have towards the pig? It's not only, as I said, it's not the only unkosher amongst all the non-kosher animals. But it somehow gets the worst treatment of all the non-kosher animals. For example, people avoid saying the word pig. Many people call the animal a davar acher, another thing, rather than, using its proper name. This practice goes back to the time of the Talmud. There's actually a prohibition against raising pigs. The sages forbade raising pigs anywhere, whether in the land of Israel or elsewhere. The sages pronounced a curse on one who raises dogs or pigs. Why? Because they cause frequent and serious damage. The Talmud traces this ruling to the civil war between Hasmonean brothers, the famous showdown in the year 67 BCE between Hyrcanus and Aristobulus. Aristobulus and his forces had barricaded themselves, and each day they would send down a basket for the daily sacrifice. And one day, instead of sending up the sheep, the lamb, they send up a pig, up onto the Temple Mount. And they were being besieged by the Hyrcanus army. Yeah, the brother. So each day Aristobulus' men would send down a basket full of coins and receive in return lambs for the daily temple offerings. Till one day, the besiegers sent up a pig instead. When it was halfway up, it stuck its hooves into the wall, and the entire land of Israel, which is about 1,000 miles square, trembled. At that time, the sages declared, "Cursed be one who raises pigs." Our history is filled with martyrdom rather than eating pig. Let me give you an example. Hanukkah is about to come. During that era, Israel was under the Syrian Greek Emperor Antiochus IV. And as part of his campaign to outlaw Judaism, he sent his soldiers to the land of Israel with the orders to force the Jews to offer pigs as sacrifices. And they were forcing to give them to the Hellenistic gods and to eat the pig, to eat the meat. A Jew, 90 years old, his name was Elazar. He defied the order and endured a savage beating, even when he was offered the chance to just pretend to eat it, while really he would be given kosher meat. But no, he wouldn't even pretend. That's how far the idea of eating pig is in our world. Eventually, the Greek soldiers met their match in the town of Modi'in, where Matisyo, the famous Matisyo, the Hasmonean, began the revolt that eventually saw the country freed from this Hellenistic rule. So, what is this? Why indeed does Judaism abhor the pig so much? Let me give you some ideas. It carries diseases. Talmud tells us 10 measures of plagues descend the world. Pigs took 9 of them. Such diseases are also easily transmittable from pigs to humans, as indeed is still the case with flu and other viruses. A second reason given about the pig, it spreads filth. Maimonides notes that pigs wallow in the muck and eat revolting things. Were Jews allowed to eat pork, they would raise pigs and therefore would be introducing filth into their homes. Another reason given why we have such an abhorrence to pig, because it symbolizes hypocrisy. Why is that? It pretends to be a kosher animal because it pushes out its split hooves. Right? Ever see a pig? It sits there and it shows its feet, and if the feet are split, that's one of the signs. But we realize it's only giving an open expression of thinking it's kosher when we know inside it doesn't chew the cud. The Medrash draws a comparison between the Roman Empire and the pig. Just as the pig sticks out its hooves while it's resting, as if to say, I'm kosher, so did the Romans put on a show of justice, really to mask their avarice and their corruption. Let me tell you a Hasidic story. You know, the following tale shows another facet of a pig's lifestyle, and of course is relevance to all of us. Stories told of 2 brothers. One was a wealthy magnate, very wealthy person. The other was a pauper, but he was a very God-fearing person. Now, when the poor brother's daughter was of marriageable age, he wended his way over to his rich brother to ask him for assistance, with the wedding expenses. The rich fellow was happy to see his brother again, invited him into a lengthy tour of his palatial home. After a while, though, the poor brother, got tired of it and asked his brother to cut it out already, to cut it short. His brother couldn't understand. Don't you enjoy the exquisite beauty of every corner of my house? And his brother, the poor brother, says, there's a creature that wallows in the mud all day. If you ask it what it wants, all it can think of is more mud. You too are sunk in the mud of material pleasures, and all you want is more mud, more schmutz, more possessions, instead of focusing on the truly important things of life. But here comes the good news, dear friends. The moment you've been waiting for. Today, the pig represents the bad side of life. It turns out, though, in the future, we will be allowed to eat it. Why do you think the Hebrew name for pig is chazir? Chazir, because that's the root of chazir from choser, to return. Because in the future, God will return, lahachzir, will bring it back to be kosher for us. In the era of Mashiach, the world at large will be purified and will achieve a higher spiritual level, so that the pig will become permissible to eat. So hang in, everybody, Mashiach is coming very shortly, and you'll be able to eat a nice shtik chaza. The question is, how will the pig suddenly become kosher? How does this square away with one of the basic beliefs of Judaism, that the laws of the Torah will never change? How do we balance that by saying that when Mashiach comes that we're going to have pig will come kosher? Well, I'd share with you one answer from Reb Chaim Ibn Attar, and he says the following: that God will alter the pig's physiology so that indeed it'll chew its cud and therefore will have both kosher signs. Let me see. I want to say hello to Avram West and to Tuvia, Almain, Leonard Bernard. Hi, Rabbi. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And if you'd like to just text us a question or a thought, whatever it may be, you're welcome to do that at any time. Tell your friends, Facebook us, send a word out on Twitter, send out an email, but I certainly welcome all of you who are watching us now or watching us during the archive of this show. Now, I began by saying this evening, tonight we're going into the 10th day of Kislev. This day marks a very special, joyous day, a day of celebration in the Chabad community. Let me just share with you a little bit. Yesterday, that means all day today, all day Tuesday, is the 9th day of Kislev. This is both, surprisingly, the birthday and the day of passing of Rabbi Dov Ber of Lubavitch. He was the son and the successor to the founder of the Chabad Hasidim. The founder, of course, Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi. His son is Rab Dov Ber, and he was known for his unique style of broadening the rivers, so to speak. He was able to expand on his father's teachings, lending breadth and depth to the principles set down by his father, Rab Shneir Zalman. He was born in Lyozna, White Russia, in 1773. Rav Dov Ber was named after Rab Shneir Zalman's mentor and teacher, the famous Rav Dov Ber of Mezrich, who passed away on Kislev 19 of the previous year. Rab Dov Ber assumed the leadership of Chabad upon his father's passing in 1812. His father, the first Rebbe of the Chabad dynasty of Rebbes, was actually running away from Napoleon because he took the Russian side of that whole revolution time when Napoleon came to Russia. So in 1813, he settled in the town of Lubavitch, which continued to serve as the movement's headquarters for the next 102 years. In 1826, he was arrested on charges that his teachings threatened the imperial authority of the Tsar, but he was subsequently exonerated. Rab Dov Ber passed away on his 54th birthday in 1827, which was today, on the 9th day of Kislev. And he passed away a day before the first anniversary of his liberation. The date of his release is this date, this Jewish date of going into Wednesday, the 10th day of Kislev. And because it marked his liberation, he was able to overcome all the false attacks against him, it's celebrated amongst Chabad Hasidim as a festival of liberation. We don't say Tachnun, it's omitted from our prayers at Mincha today and then tomorrow. We have special farbrengens, special gatherings such as ours, and we study the teachings of Rab Dov Ber. And I want to share with you a teaching and a story. When Rab Dov Ber of Lubavitch, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, was just a young man of 16, his father entrusted him with the task of serving as a spiritual guide and a mentor to the young men in the Chabad community at that time. And Rab Dov Ber strongly encouraged his disciples to gather together in informal farbrengens, to inspire each other, to consult with each other in matters that would help us refine our characters. And of course, our service to the Almighty God. And I share with you a very important teaching that I heard when I was a student at the Lubavitch Yeshiva in Paris, and it's attributed to Rab Dov Ber of Lubavitch, as we know him as the Mittler Rebbe, because he was the middle Rebbe between the first Chabad Rebbe and the next generation known as the Tzemach Tzedek. He was the middle one, the Mittler Rebbe. To identify him, he was known as the middle rabbi. And he said the following: when two Jews get together and one tells the other what ails in his heart, right? They talk heart-to-heart talk. The result is it's two godly souls taking on a single animal soul. Now, this is a very important teaching because Rab Dovbe's father elaborates this concept in the Hasidic classic, the Tanya, that each of us have two distinct souls that animate our body. The animal soul, the Nefesh HaBahamis in Hebrew, and the Nefesh Elokis, the godly soul. The animal soul is driven by being self-centered and aspires to physical life. The Neshama, the godly soul, is inspired by a selfless quest to serve Hashem. So the animal soul, which is utterly self-oriented, has no interest in the triumph of her fellow animal soul. Not so the godly soul, whose only desire is that the will of her Creator be fulfilled. This explains when two people get together and we're learning from each other, and each one is seeking advice and insight and connection to God, it becomes two souls, two neshamas against one animal soul. Because there's the person's neshama that wants to get close to God. The other neshama of your friend wants to help you get closer to God, because that's the nature of godly soul. But the animal soul that each of us have is not interested in harming the other animal soul. And therefore, when two people get together, when a person grapples alone with his spiritual ills, is looking, what we have is a one-on-one struggle. That person is struggling within himself, his two selves, his animal soul, his godly soul, back and forth. But when two people get together, the animal soul of each is overwhelmed by a double onslaught of the divine essence of man. Both his neshama wants to help him, as well as someone else's wants to help him. So it's two against one. So l'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim everybody. If you have some water or l'chaim out there, let's drink together to wish each other lange gesunte Jahr, and all the blessings that this special day brings to us should be fulfilled in our lives in every area, both physically and spiritually. I'd like to conclude with a story of this Rebbe, and it goes back actually to his father first. And I certainly welcome everyone who are joining us this evening. The story is told of Rabbi Yosef. He's 60 years old, a very learned individual, and he comes to the first Chabad Rebbe for some spiritual advice. He's 60 years old, he was never married yet, never had any children, and the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, tells him, let me tell you something. You should get married, have a child, and don't become a rabbi. You should become a wagon driver. That's good for your soul. Now, he was devastated. Here's a man, 60 years of age, had spent his time learning Torah and serving Hashem, and the Alter Rebbe is telling him he should become a wagon driver. Typically, in those days, a wagon driver was associated with low class and, emptiness. He pushed it off in his mind. Well, the years go by, and he's nearly 70 now. He got married, he has a child, and suddenly a group of people come and invite him to become the rabbi of the town. And suddenly he remembers what the first Chabad Rebbe had told him, that you shouldn't become a rabbi, you should become a wagon driver. And he started to realize, he says, he hasn't fulfilled that which the Alter Rebbe told him to do. To give up his learning and give up everything and become a wagon driver. It bothered him so. And he went to the corner there where all the wagon drivers hang around. The people couldn't believe him. Everyone knows him for his piety, and people used to come to him and learning. And now he should become a wagon driver. After a day trying to figure out how to hold a horse and how to put a saddle on, he came home for schmutzig, and comes home, he finds his wife is crying because she heard about this. She heard that her husband, her pious husband, now was trying to become a wagon driver. So he tells her the whole story. He tells how the Alter Rebbe told him what's good for his soul is to go out there and become a wagon driver. She says, if that's the case, here, take my jewelry, go there, pawn it off, buy yourself a horse and a wagon, and go out there and find yourself a route and do deliveries. Do what the Alter Rebbe said. Now he felt so bad. He felt bad For two reasons. First of all, he felt bad that he has to become a wagon driver. But he felt more bad that his wife appreciated what his Rebbe had told him, and he hadn't done it. So he went out there, and he found a friend of his who taught him the business, taught him how to put the saddle on, how to hold the horse, and he started doing routes, traveling, delivering packages, delivering people. But he had one consolation. His friend was a pious Jew. He was a wagon driver, and he found time to study at night and to make sure he would go to the minyan in the morning before he left. He figured he'll follow his friend, even though he doesn't like to become a wagon driver, but at least he'll find he can focus on praying with the minyan every morning and learning Torah when he comes home. And he found balance. He found consolation with that. One day he finds himself in a hotel, and the hotel is visited by a relative, an individual who's a friend of the count, the local count. This was an individual, he was a Jewish guy. He'd given up his family, given up everything. He'd married out. He'd become close. He married a cousin of the Duke, and the Duke had sent him on a special mission. And in the mission, he needed to have a wagon, and then a wagon driver. So he came to the hotel where Rabbi Yosef was the guest, and the hotel owners made the shidduch. He said, "Look, here, I have a wagon driver for you." So the count's, this friend of his, this man, insisted that he leave very early in the morning for the mission. And he was so upset. He said, "I can't. I have to wait till the daybreak. I do my prayers in the morning. There's no way I'm going to leave at this time." He said, "I'm not taking the job." The hotel owner says, "What, are you crazy? I'm giving you a chance to make parnasa. So you won't daven with a minyan. You'll daven another time." He felt so bad. Now he has to justify praying in the morning at the right time. He felt really down about himself. So Rabbi Yosef went into his room and he cried the whole night. Guess what? In the next room is this guy. And he hears how this rabbi's crying the whole night. And why he's crying. And that suddenly wakens up within himself his own Jewishness. And he starts to cry. He can't sleep. The next morning he knocks on the door and he says to the Rabbi Yosef, "I'd like to borrow your tefillin." He says, "No problem." He gave it to him. And he figured he'd get him back in a few minutes. No, hour, 2 hours, 3 hours until he gave him back. When he came back, he said to the hotel owner, this gentleman, that he needed to see a doctor. It turned out he was having a very, very high fever. And the doctors were saying that he's nearly coming out. He's nearly is going to pass away if the fever doesn't break. Meanwhile, Rabbi Yosef hears this whole story. He realizes there's something special going on over here. Why should we be right next door to this man who really is a Jew, and he's got this fever now? He goes to speak to him, and the man opens up and he says, "I want to be a good Jew. I realized all these things that have been happening to me." Meanwhile, just off the record, his wife and his daughter, this Jewish guy who had married out, had sadly passed away in a boating accident. And they weren't sure whether to tell him or not now that he was so ill. But after Rabbi Yosef spoke to him and gave him away and welcomed him back as a Jew, he suddenly got better. And that is basically the end of the story. Rabbi Yosef comes home. By that time, the Alter Rebbe, who had told him to become a wagon driver, passed away. And Rab Dov Ber, who we remember tonight, the Mittler Rebbe, called him in and said, "Your job as a wagon driver is over. You can now become a rabbi of a shul, of a community." And indeed, not too long afterwards, he was invited to become a rabbi of a shul. I share this story with you for two reasons. First, a soul may come into this world. The Baal Shem Tov tells us for 70 or 80 years. And we're doing all kinds of good things. But the main reason may be just to help a Jew. In this case, Rabbi Yosef was told to become a wagon driver for that short period of time to help this lost Jew find his way home. And number two, what we can learn from his wife, Rabbi Yosef's wife, that when she heard that the Alter Rebbe told him to become a wagon driver, she said, go and do it. He was worried about his learning and his everything else. And she says, if your Rebbe tells you to do something, there has to be a deeper reason. She had more faith, quite rightly. And as we see throughout history, Jewish women know exactly. They're far more faithful. That's why the Jewish women don't need as many reminders as hats and tzitzis, etc., because we get carried away with our rationale and our thinking process, etc., while his wife, Rabbi Yosef's wife, knew exactly the emes. This is your host, Rabbi Pearl. I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. L'chaim again, as we remember the day that the Mittler Rebbe was liberated from prison, a day for all of us. Not only do we think back in terms of the story and the history, but we ourselves should ultimately be released from the constrictions and all the things that limit us to reaching our potential. And we look forward to the ultimate release, the release of this exile with the coming of Mashiach. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good week.